Every successful real estate investor knows the challenges of growing their financial assets firsthand. Even with stable, cash-flowing portfolios, it can be difficult to gain access to the capital needed to flourish.
The current situation, your capital options are you're going to get a mortgage and there's equity. Typically a mortgage, you're going to get a 60 to 75% loan. You can't use money for renovations or to pursue other deals.
There's rising inflation rate, rising interest rate. Also, banks are pulling back on leverage, which means that real estate investors are having to bring a lot more capital to the closing table than they ever have before.
I graduated with a finance degree at the University of Miami. I was fortunate to play in the NFL for 10 years. I always passively invested in real estate. When I did retire, I started to be more active. It was really understanding what my mentors did, why these properties were good properties, what makes a tenant a good tenant. Despite my experience, I'm not one of the Blackstones of the world. You don't get any real benefit of the doubt, especially if rates start to go up, lending gets tight. You still have to now make that one deal pencil out with the lenders who all of a sudden become very, very conservative.
Equity is incredibly flexible. However, equity investors are going to get typically 70 or 80% of the appreciation that comes from owning that property.
Raising capital is a very time-intensive process. You're having to spend time talking to the investors, build pitch materials that's taking time away from you actually running your business.
When you pencil out what you believe you should be getting, always a little bit less. You have to now start to figure out what's the most important aspect that you're going to use your capital for, as opposed to being able to have that whole lump sum of cash to grow the business.
One of the big challenges of being in the real estate business is it's very capital intensive. And then when you do make the investment, you're getting a very small relative return on a day-to-day basis. A lot of the value we do produce is in the bricks. Things that can help us with liquidity are very welcome. It's important for me to do well by doing good. I really wanted to help people with their housing needs. I want them to feel good about where they live and live safe, successful, and happy lives.
It's March 2022. We're under contract to buy a great apartment complex in downtown LA, and the lender comes and says, hey, we're pulling back proceeds. In order to raise money for investors, I have to completely restructure the deal. But I have this portfolio of cash flowing assets. What if I could just get 12 or 18 months of that cash flow today? And that's where I got the idea to give established real estate entrepreneurs with stabilized properties the ability to get liquidity for any of their capital needs.
Providing cash flow-based financing for experienced real estate entrepreneurs. Nectar provides the fast, flexible, working capital financing you need to scale your rental portfolio without raising equity.
What inspired me to build Nectar is the very first big project that I worked on. So it was a 13-unit townhome complex in the heart of Atlanta. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this project. But then when it came time to sell the property, 80% of the money that we made on the property went to our investors that were sitting back, just watching me do all the work. It was a really tough pill to swallow. I want to empower other real estate owners and managers to be able to grow and build their businesses using their own resources.
We allow people to sell a portion of their cash flow as opposed to bringing on equity investors. You have a fund, for instance, that has 10 properties. You can use Nectar to get 18 or 24 months of cash flow and buy another 2 or 3 properties for your fund. You haven't raised a single additional dollar of equity from your investors in the fund, but now your fund has 20 or 30% more properties that are appreciating.
Nectar helped me grow my portfolio by understanding there is the cash flow available to reinvest. Nectar does a great job in understanding the landlord. They recognized that I was going to use the money wisely. I'm going to use it to invest in another property, which I did, and from there continue to grow.
One of the big challenges that investors face in properties is accessing the value they've created. If you produce a lot of value in a certain deal or whatever, and you want to do another one, Nectar comes in and is invaluable in helping to access those funds.
The service that Nectar provides is so important because it relieves the stress of dealing with some of the more conventional lenders. It becomes a personal relationship and not so much transactional. That's what really separates Nectar.
If you want to invest in Nectar to help us continue to do what we do, we have a fund that pays a 12% annual dividend, 3% every quarter. It's backed by a diversified pool of the best real estate sponsors in the country with stabilized, cash flowing assets. We make sure that your investment is protected, even in a recessionary period, by ensuring that every single one of our advances and every single one of our deals can withstand a 15 to 20% revenue decline. Even in an environment across the entire country, revenues are down 15 to 20%, your investment will still be protected. Now and in the future, I want Nectar to be the go-to place for fast and flexible capital and data-driven insights for small and medium-sized real estate owners and entrepreneurs.
Visit usenectar.com to get started today.